Welcome again. So before we start with questions, I would like to ask you to briefly introduce yourselves and your VCs. Please.
So hi, everyone. I'm Cecilia, Senior Investment Manager at Norskin VC. We like to consider ourselves Europe's largest early-stage impact investor, so investing in both deep tech, hardware, software across companies that are good for people and good for planet.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam Naswallahi. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm a principal at InMotion Ventures. InMotion Ventures is the VC of Jaguar Land Rover. We're an early stage investor, so predominantly seed to Series A in 3 areas: enterprise and infrastructure, industrial tech, and climate.
Hi everyone, Nadia, great to meet you. I'm a principal at Cherry Ventures. We invest pre-seed to Series A out of a currently $500 million fund, and everyone at Cherry is a former operator or founder. For me, that means I'm a data scientist by training, and prior to this, built software to design PCBs, so hardware chips.
Thank you very much. So today we have different perspectives spanning impact, industrial transformation, and mobility. So let's zoom out for a moment. AI is often positioned as transformative, but not all transformation is immediate or visible. Let's start with you, Cecilia. Where are you seeing the real tangible impact from AI today? So is it particularly in addressing societal or industrial challenges? And other question, how is the current geopolitical environment shaping what technologies are considered critical?
Yeah, of course. So I guess the first part of that is AI is really powerful, and you think back to GPT 3.5 in 2022 and how far we've come just since then. It's really still the beginning of understanding what AI can do. One of the core exciting things about AI is the concept of emergence, which is when an LLM has enough data, it can start making connections and conclusions that were not pre-trained and were not pre-programmed. So really seeing things that humans didn't even expect. That combined with the ability to just process lots of data and create many outputs means you have this very smart, very insightful new technology. We're already seeing it crack and uncover insights into things like radiology or materials discovery or biotech R&D that previously we didn't have this level of insight into. So super exciting, and that's also part 2 of the question, exactly why people understand that it is going to be a critical resource in the next few decades. If we think of the current geopolitical situation, it's more of a reminder that constraints or global choke points in resources that are incredibly important for us always have global impact. So you think of the Strait of Hormuz right now, the Ukraine war, or even the oil embargo in the 1970s. It all is a reminder that sovereignty is quite important in order to continue just keeping things moving forward and smoothly. And so that's why we see a lot of countries and nations invest in directly or through policy into AI infrastructure and innovation. PIF is doing it through Humane, the US through deregulation, the UK through AI sovereign investment. And I think there's a consensus understanding that this is going to be a critical resource in the future.
Thank you so much. Building on that, Sam, where are you seeing the most meaningful innovation today? Is it AI infrastructure, sovereignty, or industrial tech like robotics?
Yeah, really good question, because I think there's innovation across all 3 of those areas, but the way in terms of how they show up meaningfully is quite different. So if I talk about each of them very quickly, so in terms of the AI infra layer, I think there's been a whole ton of innovation, and it's been very salient to kind of people. We've been able to see that all across the ecosystem, from the AI labs to the startups themselves, there's been so much growth all across the stack, from the hardware stack, such as companies like Grok, who have created inference-specific chips, all the way to the kind of software AI tooling space, where we don't have to think that far back to see that developers would really be duct taping the infrastructure stack together to be able to use these AI models. Whereas now there's just so much more of a mature kind of ecosystem around that. They can look at their AI models in a much more scalable way. There's kind of observability, evals, that whole infrastructure piece is there. And I think it's also been further democratized to more kind of non-technical users with no-code AI workflows, open standards like MCP. So we've really shifted from this net effect of it using previously in needing to take a specialist kind of months to ship something to now a very non-technical user can ship an AI agent within hours. So that's really meaningful. So I think that's a really interesting area. When it comes to cybersecurity, I think it's really having a moment because the attack surface has grown so exponentially with the threat of AI, and we've seen this in the Claude kind of mythos model as well, where the AI is just phenomenally good at finding kind of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. But I think in terms of the current capabilities for a lot of these tools, we're not quite seeing the reliability and reasoning capability to really see a lot of those within production and really rolled out by enterprises. So there's a lot happening, but not much that we can see. And then I think robotics, to your last point, is probably what I find the most exciting, but there is a big difference at the moment in terms of the kind of companies we're seeing get a lot of buzz and a lot of funding, such as world models, generalizable robotic models, humanoids, versus what we actually see within production and what's showing up meaningfully within manufacturing. So what we're seeing show up within manufacturing is more kind of narrow use cases and a very full stack approach where it's not just buzzy software, it's a complete software hardware package to the manufacturers. But I think a lot of the stuff we're not seeing, that kind of bucket of those generalizable world models, it's not showing up meaningfully yet, but I think the progress that has been made has been really exciting. And I think it's just a very difficult problem. If we think about how LLMs were trained on billions of hours of kind of internet video data, all the kind of text in the internet, there's only about 300,000 hours worth of robotic data. And actually developing those models is much more capital intensive, it's much more difficult. And I think you have to be much more innovative to actually get to that end product and unlock a lot of those exciting pieces. So I'd probably say that's an area I'm most excited about, but we're not seeing it publicly meaningfully yet.
Yeah, thank you. So generally innovation is happening across multiple layers. And at the same time, there is a shift between digital innovation towards systems that interacts with physical world. So Nadia, I would like to hear your opinion. What do you think, how much of the next wave of AI innovation will come from software and how much from the physical AI? And today we heard a lot about physical AI. Please.
Yeah, super interesting. So for us as a generalist investor, software investments are always great, right? Because comparably, it's easier to build than some of the things we see in hardware. You have huge margins. It's just like, for an investor, this is great, right? You can build it fast, you can give it to many people, and it makes money, right? And then I think when you look at investment cycles, everyone kind of invests in software until you hit the limits of physical worlds again. And that's what we're seeing today, right? We can't really push software any further than we have until today. So what we need to do is we need to invest in energy, infrastructure, compute, in order to also push the software world a bit further. And then I think that's a very cool thing about venture as a investment category is that the people that give us money actually are very interested in technological advancements. And if technology is currently constrained by the physical, as an investor, we are all super fast to adapt and be like, no, this is what will help us progress as fast as possible. So I think my answer to that is we will see physical investments being sponsored and endorsed up until the point that we can have another huge software unlock, and then probably will go down again. And there's some bigger elements to that which are political, and then you have questions whether this is a global initiative of bringing technology forward or if it becomes more of a national initiative. And based on that, every investor will have to kind of have their own answer if they're playing on a global or a local playing field. But yeah, a lot of hardware investments will come, for sure.
Thank you, and that leads us to a next question because it raises and point out to some different constraints when it comes to physical AI, like longer timelines, higher capital intensity, more complex deployment environments. Sam, from your perspective, working closely with the industry, there is often a gap between what gets funded and what enterprises actually adopt companies. So why does that disconnection exist?
So I think very tactically, it's normally two things. I think the first one is that the technology might be there, but the workflow integration isn't. And I kind of see this all the time, particularly for larger companies, that they have so many disparate teams, there are so many systems layered on top of each other, that often a startup will come up and say that I have this kind of amazing platform which you can use, and the enterprise will turn around and say, I actually don't want to use your platform, I just want it to feed into my other systems. Can it do that, yes or no? So I think that's the first piece. And then the second piece, I think, is the buying process, which can be quite complicated for large enterprises as well. And there's a few different factors there, whether it's just not kind of understanding the complexity of the process, whether it's the buying personas, that sometimes the kind of enterprise kind of persona that you're speaking with is your champion and the user, but they may not be holding the budget. And it's also understanding all the decisions that have gone on in that enterprise before, in terms of, I also see a lot that enterprises have made platform level decisions and want kind of point solutions to fit into their already existing kind of decision matrix. But kind of companies come and want to have a more kind of platform perspective. That's the very kind of tangible piece. But if we're kind of talking about like what gets funded versus what gets implemented, I think us as VCs, we're kind of naturally looking very closely at the founder in terms of, do they have an unfair advantage in terms of their insight or their previous experience or the people which they can hire or kind of distribution, and also what's the long-term vision and narrative of this company. Whereas I think enterprises have a slightly different lens of that. They're looking for, is this going to solve my immediate problem? And looking at the technology, but also the broader operating model of, does this fit into my procurement process? Is this going to pass security review? How is this really going to be working? And who's kind of going to be accountable to give me the certainty I need to really use it? So I think we're both looking at one company, but from slightly different flavors.
Yeah, thank you. It also leads us to a question that there is a gap between what kind of readiness is assessed when it comes to the companies and investments. So I would like to ask all of you to give your opinion and tell us what actually makes the company enterprise ready versus venture backable. You can give some of examples from your VCs and companies you invested. Cecilia, maybe you can start and then we can go.
Yeah, of course. So I think Sam's exactly right. You know, enterprise ready is a completely different beast. I think in a startup setting or in a VC setting, what you see is a product that has the potential to work and has this really long tail potential to, you know, create impact or solve a problem. At the enterprise readiness level, what it needs to be is repeatable and replicable and reliable, because your downside or, you know, downtime in a process or an industrial, you know, manufacturing plant or what have it, the risk is a lot higher and is easily quantifiable. And so you need to think about, am I ready for a bunch of different scenarios, externalities, and, you know, is this going to really stand up to the challenge of higher complexity as opposed to a product that in theory or in isolation is prepared. And, you know, that's a risk that VCs are willing to take when we invest in a product, because we see that potential. But by the time you're selling to an enterprise, it's a little bit less, I would say, forgiving of failure or of, you know, risk.
Yeah, exactly. Nadia?
Yeah, to answer the question, I think I only have like one piece of advice for anyone who might be a founder in this room. When you think about speaking to venture, focus on asymmetric upside, right? Like for the money we invest, we want to see a 10x, 100x, I don't know, 1,000x, like some investors made on scale, which is insane. And then when you speak to enterprises, think about reliability, because they have a pain that they want to solve, and they want to solve it every time they encounter it. For VCs, it doesn't matter if you solve the pain correctly every time you see it. It just matters how much the value exponentially goes up on what you're creating. Versus for enterprises, it's just they're buying security and a problem that is solved. So I think the pitch slightly changes, as you said earlier.
Nadia, anything to add? No? Good. Okay. I'm looking at the time, and I think we are a little bit running out of time. So I will ask you one question, although we had a lot of topics to discuss before when we prepared for this. So it's important, and the idea of resilience is very important also in this landscape that's moving so quickly and which is influenced both by the market cycles and geopolitical shifts. So let's look ahead 5 to 10 years. Which areas of technology you think are most likely to reshape everyday life? Which, Nadia, let's start with you.
Happy to take it. For me, there's only one answer. I'm like hyper excited about this, and there's hundreds of possible answers. I love the like Neuralink merges of this world. I think it might be a bit of a controversial answer here, but I'm just so excited on like where AI and human connection can go and what it is already showing for people that might have disabilities. I think it is one of the truly most life-changing areas I'm at least seeing. Yeah.
Sam, please.
Yeah, I think for me, a bit similar in terms of that AI interface and that kind of increasingly being how we kind of walk through our lives. Like even for me, like ringing my dentist and now speaking to an AI receptionist has revolutionized my life. So I think that will become increasingly big. And I think on the climate side, I think hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, I think there's going to be so many issues around water scarcity, a lot around the kind of impact it's going to have on everyday life. So I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot more innovation within that field.
Cecilia.
Yeah, I think 2 things that kind of go together that I'm incredibly excited about. One is the unlock of, AI in the physical and industrial world, and 2 is the energy and resource abundance that can lead to. So ideally, or what I would love to see once all of these technologies come together is, abundance being existent in our lives in a way that, we currently experience a lot of bottlenecks, both from resource perspective, human capital perspective, time perspective. That would be the ultimate dream scenario. It means we've probably done okay as VCs and also helped to, solve some big problems.
Yeah, you already answered everything, but one last message to the audience based on the topic of our panel today.
Yeah. I think the most enduring companies that I've seen and the most enduring ideas are the ones that where the solution or the product that you build has no losers. So you're solving a problem for your customer, you're solving a problem for the industry, and everyone benefits. And I think those are the most resilient business models and the most high impact as well, is where you create abundance for everybody in the value chain.
Thank you. Sam?
I think I'd have probably something slightly similar to say as well, that I think there's so much going on at the moment, and I think there's a big view on what can I solve today, which is a real pain point today, but what does the future look like? And I really think the best founders have a view on kind of both, of solving today's problem, but having a view on the architecture beneath that, or the value proposition that you can kind of scale out to make sure you're relevant to solving to kind of tomorrow's problems as well.
Thank you, Nadia.
Yeah, fully agree here. I think for you as an audience, the only advice I can give you is no matter what you do or what your job is, just start building, right? I think this is the nicest time where any task that either of us, no matter if we're a founder, investor, work at Tech.eu, like anything that was annoying in our past, we can now automate. And I think truly like working has never been that much fun. And if you haven't tried automating anything you don't like doing, just go home today and do it. Like your life will be so much better, promised.
Thank you so much for joining us today and for an inspiring discussion. And please join me thanking our panelists.